I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. At a House Judiciary Committee hearing on Tuesday, Representative Jim Jordan raised the alarm about the government spying on American citizens. The Ohio Republican said that the government could not be trusted to collect this information without guardrails. Jordan referenced the investigation into former President Trump, saying, quote, "If the FBI can do it to a presidential campaign, they can do it to anyone." Take a listen to his remarks here.
I want to thank you for having this hearing and for our witnesses, all of our witnesses who are here today. I look forward to their testimony. Over the last year, we've seen how big government has threatened almost every freedom Americans enjoy. And just stop and think about it for a second. The First Amendment rights we enjoy, your right to practice your faith, your right to assemble, right to petition the government, freedom of press, freedom of speech, every single one has been attacked, has been assaulted over the last year by government. Until a few months ago, there were still places in the country where a full congregation couldn't meet on Sunday morning. Your right to assemble. And I always use the example. About a year and a half ago, I spoke to the New Mexico Republican Party in Amarillo, Texas, because they had to go to Texas for the freedom to assemble and meet in the size group that they wanted to meet. Ability to petition your government, again, until a few months ago, American citizens couldn't even go into their capital to talk to their member of Congress to petition them to redress their grievances because the Speaker of the House wouldn't let them in. And we know what's happened with freedom of press and freedom of speech. I mean, the government was they did for like 3 weeks, then thank goodness they canceled it. They tried to form a disinformation governance board, for goodness sake. So First Amendment attacks we've seen. We know about the Second Amendment attacks. There's going to be one tomorrow in this committee, a markup on a bill to limit the Second Amendment rights law-abiding Americans enjoy. And of course, today the focus is on our Fourth Amendment rights. Never before in our history has the government known more about its citizens and had more sophisticated tools for spying on us than right now. Not only does government have the technological abilities to gather large amounts of information about us, but the law is also in many ways outdated and on the side of those doing the spying rather than on those being spied on. This is wrong and it's un-American. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act was originally intended by Congress to rein in abuses from the intelligence community in the 60s and 70s. FISA grew out of the Senate's Church Committee investigation, which uncovered, among other things, that the CIA was infiltrating political organizations. But over time, what were supposed to be guardrails have turned into loopholes for legitimizing a surveillance dragnet. Nowhere was this more obvious than when the FBI Director Comey and his cronies misused the FISA program to target a presidential campaign. It took years for us to uncover the systematic abuses that allowed Comey and the FBI to spy on an American president. And if the FBI can do it, and this is critical, the FBI can do it to a presidential campaign, they can do it to anyone, any American citizen. But still, FISA remains broken and in desperate need of serious reform. It is our hope that Congress will be ready soon to move serious legislation to stop these abuses and provide for more transparency and accountability in the FISA process. And the problem is hardly limited to FISA. The mass adoption of electronic devices that collect data on every aspect of our lives has allowed new avenues for surveillance that require us to rethink the law. I want to thank former Chairman Goodlatte for joining us today. Among other things, Chairman Goodlatte shepherded through much-needed reforms to the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, or EPCA. That reform legislation was reported out of this committee and passed the House twice. Unfortunately, did not get through the Senate. It's high time that Congress reform that law. This should be low-hanging fruit to protect Americans' privacy. That legislation is woefully outdated. It was signed into law in 1986 before the modern internet existed, and it has left many loopholes for warrantless surveillance that are regularly exploited by law enforcement. Earlier this year, this committee sought to close one such loophole when we passed legislation to put restrictions on gag orders that prevent third parties from telling their customers that their information is being solicited by the government. But we still have much work to do. This must include us taking a hard look at government's warrantless access to commercially available bulk data and its use of tools like Pegasus that allow them to spy on encrypted mobile devices. It should also include us considering restrictions on the government's use of facial recognition technology within the United States to target citizens. I hope that we can work together and we can begin the long overdue process of putting common sense guardrails in place to protect Americans' Fourth Amendment liberties. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for this hearing, and I do look forward to the discussion and the testimony from our witnesses.